Number one is the Honorary Council of the Embassy of the Russian Federation in Canada. Is that correct? Erin Chopper, welcome. And then we have the Consul General of Switzerland here, Pascal Bonas. Thank you very much for coming and also for all your support for this event. And last but not least, I would like to welcome you all in the name of the Swiss-Canadian Chamber of Commerce, especially of the Board of Directors. We would like to welcome you to our Swiss Crypto Valley cocktail event. So, but actually it's not only Swiss Crypto Valley, it's also blockchain. And why blockchain actually and Switzerland, the two fit together very nicely, and apparently somebody else has found out how to do this. And so it appears to be that there are blockchain developments in Switzerland that are maybe ahead of the game. So, of course, coming from Switzerland, that would make me very proud. And this evening was made possible by the generous support of the Royal Bank of Canada, the Swiss Consul General of Switzerland here in Vancouver, and the Greater Zurich Area Organization, that is a public-private partnership. Of course, we also try to work together with the public and also private enterprise, so we are really a business organization, the Swiss Canadian Chamber of Commerce. There's also special thanks to Michael Derenlinger, he's sitting over there, of RBC, and Heiko Rees, UBS. Heiko, where are you? Down there. Who helped me to organize this event. And of course, last but not least, there's always a powerful person behind everything. And actually, I would like to thank Nina Bader. Thank you for all your patience, innovative ideas, and tireless efforts. Without you, we couldn't have made it. Our evening together will unfold in 5 steps. Lucas Sieber, to my right, will speak about the birth and growth of the Swiss Crypto Valley and the vision for the future. Thomas Linter, to my left, will outline the importance of new legal frameworks for blockchains and cryptocurrencies, and will touch on ICOs, there's difference between ICO and IPO, just like that, and blockchain challenges. And then a guy, Halford Thompson, who will speak about his experience in creating a successful company in the blockchain space, and how the BTL, that's his company, Internet Blockchain, will change the IT business. He is up to something, it scares me at the moment. Okay, after the 3 short presentations, the speaker will then answer questions from the audience. You can ask them directly. And finally, Michael Derenlinger will have some closing remarks. So let me introduce the 3 speakers, so I'll give a quick background. Lucas Sieber is based in New York City, where he is the Executive Director for Greater Zurich Area, the official investment support agency, quite a mouthful, of Zurich and surrounding areas. Greater Zurich Area, that's the company, helps international companies with the evaluation and transition into Switzerland. So if you want to set up shop in Switzerland, in the Crypto Valley, Lucas Sieber is the man to talk to. Lucas Sieber supported various technology companies, in particular blockchain companies, to set up the business in Switzerland. Now, Thomas Linder, he is a tax partner with MNE. I still try to find out what it stands for, but MNE in Zurich. MNE is actually one of the largest legal companies in Switzerland, and the firm behind the historic Ethereum. So, and maybe we'll speak about it. Token sale in 2014. So, if you would have invested there a dollar, today you would have how much? 220 or more? Okay, $220. So from $1,000 investment to over $250,000. So it's not shabby within 3 years. Okay, so I don't think. I don't know whether that's really a healthy development, but that is how fast things move. Ethereum, the blockchain company, is actually the major blockchain company in the world. And I didn't know that 2 years ago, and when I started to read about blockchains, I realized, holy smoke, the big elephant is sitting in Switzerland. So, and of course, that got me very excited to bring these people in. Thomas Linde assists Swiss and foreign companies with their blockchain-related projects, and as part of the NNE team, he provides legal advice for companies for their fintech projects. And finally, Guy Halford Thompson. I'm very happy he's here. He represents Vancouver. He is the founder and former CEO of the BTL Group, the first publicly traded blockchain technology company in Vancouver. BTL has created an enterprise-grade private blockchain, and there is a difference between private blockchains and public blockchains, called Interbit. Guy is also a co-founder of Quick Bitcoin, a Bitcoin trading company that introduced one of the first Bitcoin ATMs in the United Kingdom in 2013. At that point in time, blockchain technologies was not really well known, let alone Bitcoin. Before we start the presentation, I give it a try. I try to explain what a blockchain is. So stay with me, stay focused. Let's start. Blockchain, or distributed ledger technology, is a decentralized database or ledger that contains a continuously growing list of data records of transactions that, once established, cannot be changed. Fixed forever. Whether it's good or bad is a different story. And this new technology is behind cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, Ether. That Ether is the currency developed by Ethereum, and ESOS, that's the latest Bitcoin, and the latest cryptocurrency that has come out of the Swiss Crypto Valley. But its applications, the blockchain applications, are far wider. It potentially could change whole industries, from filmmaking, where I'm very interested in, to healthcare. So now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our first speaker, Lukas Sieber, with a warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Royal Bank of Canada, for hosting this event. This beautiful location. I live in New York City, but I don't get a view like this every day. It's amazing. It's also amazing to see how many people show up for a blockchain event in Canada, in Vancouver. Really happy to be here and share what I do. Let me briefly frame what I do. Probably it helps. I'm not a blockchain guy, so let me explain to you why I'm ending up here speaking to you. What I do is economic development for Switzerland, particularly for Zurich and surrounding areas. Meaning we strategically and specifically target companies which might fit well into the local ecosystem. Traditionally, this has been life science companies, medtech companies, software companies. So you, for instance, have Google setting up the largest R&D lab outside of the US in Zurich. We helped Biogen investing 1.5 billion last year in Solothurn, and so on and so on. So we go out there and try to find the jewels, the hidden jewels, which might be the next Google. And the reason why we engage in blockchain is quite simple. After we did not so well with banking, you might be aware that Switzerland struggled quite a bit in 2008 and 2009. We try to reinvent our industry, and why I bring up the banking stuff, that's a personal component. I used to work at the Swiss Embassy in Washington, D.C. in 2008, 2009, and it was not funny at all. I had to explain, I was doing communications, and I had to explain what Switzerland is doing, why we ended up on blacklists, on grey lists. So we consider banking, finance probably not the future, however it's still extremely important. So we needed to reinvent ourselves, and we thought blockchain might be one of these elements which could help Switzerland to have a sustainable and innovative future. Let me explain why and then how we positioned the Greater Zurich area, particularly Crypto Valley, which is basically a stretch between Zug and Zurich, as the probably leading destination for blockchain companies today in the world. But let me start with quite an oxymoron. When I learned about blockchain technology, it's all about distributed, it's all about decentralized technology. So why in the world should a central place like Zug, like Zurich, go out there and tell them, hey guys, here's the location for you guys? So it's kind of an oxymoron to go out there and tell people that you need to set up shop in a central location to do business. But there's reasons why we actually have quite a benefit for these companies. Can I get the first slide? So you might know Switzerland is quite a legacy which tend to attract a number of companies over time. Particularly important to blockchain is most probably Switzerland's design in our storytelling and to attract more companies. Then of course Switzerland is not a poor country, it's quite rich. However, when I compare our activity in terms of venture capital to the US and as well as to Vancouver, it's not quite the same game. VCs are a missing element in Switzerland. However, people have money and you need to get money out of their pockets in a different way than VCs. We come to that later on. Infrastructure, of course, we have excellent rail, flight, infrastructure, that's a given. I think, have you guys been to Switzerland? Did anyone, just to check that I'm not boring you, anyone heard about Crypto Valley before? Yes. Very few, okay. That's great. Last but not least, of course, the quality of life is not the worst in Switzerland, you might know that. Zurich is in the top 3 worldwide when it comes to quality of life. It's outstanding, it's amazing. Please visit. With that, to the next slide. Thank you. So what else can we tell? What is favorable about Switzerland? You might know Switzerland has quite attractive tax rates, competitive tax rates. However, that's pretty much leveled these days in Europe. We talk about the Netherlands, we talk about Ireland, we talk about the UK. We all have extremely competitive tax rates, so that's certainly something which is not the decisive factor anymore. However, what is a very decisive factor in Switzerland is the approach and access to government, which becomes quite handy for blockchain companies. Switzerland doesn't really know red tape, so you basically can interact with government entities as well as with regulators on a daily basis and in a direct fashion. So if you have an issue, you basically talk to them. Me, living in New York City, having my own company set up in New York City, it's impossible. I never can talk to the IRS. In Switzerland, you pick up the phone, call the tax authorities. If you need assistance in terms of regulatory for your company, you pick up the phone and call them. And that's quite a tremendous advantage we have, particularly when we talk about a technology which is way faster than our regulatory framework. And the issues we see today in the world is basically a lack of the speed of regulatory versus the technology advancement. Then, well, what can we say? No exit taxation, a high number of double tax treaties. So all in all, the stability, the legal framework Switzerland offers is already extremely nice and extremely safe. Next slide, please. So let me try to tell you the story how we came about to the Crypto Valley. It was about 2013 when we were first approached by a company trying to set up shop. Namely, it was actually a company based here or an entrepreneur based in Vancouver. The guy's name is Johan Gevers. You might know the name. Anyway, he set up his company in Zug and thought Zug might be a great place for distributed ledger technologies, which is blockchain. However, he was alone, and he tried to find like-minded companies, like-minded individuals who would support his mission and support his vision to establish the world-leading blockchain ecosystem. And what he did first was knocking on the door of the government. And the government called us and was like, hey, Lucas, actually we have this crypto thing. What can we do? Can we tell a story about it? Can we engage? Can we bring more companies? And we sat together and came up with Crypto Valley and went out there, branded the term wherever we could, reached out actively to the community. And within no time, it was actually Johan convincing Vitalik, a Canadian citizen, setting up Ethereum in Zug, and Thomas will speak about that later on. He was the guy setting them up. And after that, it was kind of a self-fulfilling thing. As soon as Ethereum set up shop, we basically had pretty much everyone else, and we didn't need to tell the story. Typically in my job, it's quite tough to explain to management why Switzerland. Switzerland is expensive. It might not make sense on the first sight to expand into Switzerland, particularly in the traditional kind of industries. So while I'm fighting for meetings and fighting for phone calls with life sciences, with software companies, my inbox is getting filled every day by requests from blockchain companies, as there are not many jurisdictions which offer the safety and the openness Switzerland currently displays. And again, the crucial element here is the openness and the acceptance of Swiss legislators and regulators towards a new technology. Then, of course, Switzerland is pretty much everything which was needed. We have first-class educational institutions, ETH, the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. It's probably the #1 university in continental Europe, clearly the #1 university when it comes to engineering, producing a high number of talents. And we start to see the growth of accelerators, incubators, which of course help, even though Switzerland, I have to say that Switzerland is not a startup nation at all. We're currently transitioning into one. Switzerland does lack the ability to risk. Switzerland does not have a VC ecosystem, so we needed alternative ways, and blockchain might be such a way to establish ourselves in a way which allows us to be at the forefront of the startup community. Then, of course, Switzerland is small and is an extremely handy test bed for new technologies, particularly cryptocurrencies. So, for instance, Bitcoin for a while is an official currency in Switzerland, treated like any other currency. It's quite remarkable considering what's going on in the world these days. Next slide, please. I was telling about that already. Talent, I think talent is crucial, attracting talent. To give you an example, we set up Google about 10 years ago in Zurich, and by now Zurich is known within Google as the real Mountain View, and Google actually has issues to motivate people to move to Switzerland. However, they have also issues to move them back. They all want to stay. Quality of life tends to be amazing, and a lot of these Googlers actually decide to stay in Switzerland, and these talents are becoming available to the labor market. But talking about talents, probably want to also mention the Swiss apprentice system, which most people don't know, particularly where I live in the US. It's quite a long pitch to explain to well, entrepreneurs and investors that there is pretty cheap talent, homegrown talent, and it doesn't always need to cost 250K in a year for an engineer. You actually can produce your own talent in Switzerland, and that happens on a daily basis. That's quite the skill which I think in the future will lead Switzerland to be even more successful. Next slide. So, regulatory, Thomas will certainly talk about that. It's the key element, I think, when it comes to blockchain. You might have noticed the last few weeks and months that a number of jurisdictions and nations are treating blockchain and well, ICOs, initial coin offerings, as you guys call it over here. We prefer the term token generation event, but you know what, it doesn't matter, it's the same thing. A lot of jurisdictions struggle with these kind of advancements coming out of blockchain technology, as there is no regulatory framework covering it, and the existing legal framework does not really seem to be appealing for most blockchain companies. It's expensive. Anyone who did an IPO in his life knows that it's too much cost involved, it's too much legal fees involved. Well, legal fees are involved with an ICO as well, however, certainly to a different degree. So regulatory certainly is key, and again, what makes Switzerland special when it comes to regulatory is that you have direct access to regulators. So what we currently see in Switzerland, the official Swiss well, financial regulatory body, FINMA, is actually inviting all blockchain startups to talk to them, to engage with them, to use them as a sounding board. And that's quite special when I think about the situation, particularly in the US, the SEC taking a very prohibitive stand and basically not interacting with the ecosystem, and they come out with rules, while Switzerland comes out with rules after having had consultation with most of the companies, and I think that's quite an advantage we have. And in terms of regulatory, it's probably the first time in history in Switzerland that regulators don't focus on the risks. They focus on opportunities coming out of a new technology, which is quite remarkable for a country which has faced quite some issues with regulations worldwide, particularly in terms of banking, and now we are going into a similar direction. However, I fully believe that we are on the right track, and by integrating the companies directly in our regulatory approach. Next slide. So Switzerland currently positions itself as the world's leading hub for token generating events, or ICOs. The numbers speak a clear language. In 2017 alone, we've seen about investments of north of $2 billion. About a third of these investments have come out of projects set up in Switzerland. Then just the number of ICOs well, being performed, well, right now we see probably 20 plus finalized ICOs, 40 plus in the progress, and about 115 in the pipeline, which is quite remarkable. And last but not least, out of the 6 largest ICOs, 4 have Swiss roots. Just a critical remark at the end of that. While we are super proud to have positioned Switzerland at the very, very forefront of blockchain technology and currently really serve as a magnet to all of these, I think we have to be critical in terms of the future development, and I very much appreciate that the Swiss regulators came out and took quite a critical approach lately to basically make sure that we don't become the next Switzerland 2008. So we want to have a clean solution in place, we want to have a compliant solution in place on the long run, and I'm very confident that with people like Thomas, who is advising many of these companies in terms of legal and tax, we will be able to position Switzerland on the long run as the leading jurisdictions for blockchain. Thomas, with that, the floor is yours.
thank you, Peter, for the invitation. Blockchain. What's blockchain? So, if we talk about blockchain, everyone, I know the buzzword, but I don't know actually what it is, what technology is all about. But do you know Bitcoin? Yeah, Bitcoin, I know, this digital money that can be used for buying drugs in the darknet or whatever you want to do, you know. Okay, at least you're going in the right direction. So, but Bitcoin is actually a good use case to explain the blockchain, because already the word is quite useful. So it's bit and it's coin. So if we take the bit is actually the technology. So that means it's a digitally stored information. So it's just an information, nothing more. And this is stored in a digital ledger, and the ledger is not centrally stored on a server, it's actually decentrally stored everywhere. So if you are the users using Bitcoins, then you have all the information, how many Bitcoins each party has in the network. And that gives creates a security that no one can cheat in, because everyone knows how much the other has. And if I tell the network, I will now send 10 Bitcoins to Peter, then you are taking your list, your digital list. Yeah, but Thomas doesn't have any 10 Bitcoins on his account, so it's not possible to do this transaction. So you all will kind of cancel the transaction, and it didn't happen. So that's the idea behind this decentralized ledger. So it's not one entity like a bank or a financial intermediary that is responsible to hold the accounts and do the bookkeeping. It's actually everyone that is involved is doing the bookkeeping, and that allows that you are doing peer-to-peer transaction without having a bank involved. So that's the bit part. Then there's the coin part. Yes, you can use it as a means of payment. So I can send it to Peter if Peter accepts Bitcoin. I don't know whether you do. Starting, so I guess member fees can be paid in Bitcoins in the future. So if he is accepting Bitcoins for whatever he sells me, he wants to sell me a bike. He gives me the bank, I send him Bitcoins. I can also send him a bottle of wine, whatever it's our agreement between each other what we want to transact. But we don't need anyone in between that is a bank or a financial intermediary that takes a fee and generates costs, so we can do the transaction directly. And so that explains a little bit that the coin part is important to understand that you can do peer-to-peer transactions and you send this digital information around. But much more important is actually the bit part, so it's the technology. Because the technology as such, I say, allows that you gain control over a specific information that is stored in this distributed ledger. So if I'm an account holder and I'm the owner of 10 Bitcoins in this list, then I'm the only one with my password that can send it to Peter. No one else can do it. If I lose my password, no one else can recover it, and it's gone. So I'm gaining ownership on this information stored in this distributed ledger. And that's a very new concept. I mean, information is available in the internet. You are storing your pictures on iCloud. Do you know where it is stored? Do you know who has copied it? Do you know whether it will be published somewhere? So you don't know. It's just out there. And the blockchain gives back some control over information. And it doesn't need to be just information that is used as a means of payment. It can be health data, it can be ownership records about real estate, it can be just a license right to receive a license-free fee from a movie production, whatever then the relationship is. So this is a kind of a little bit basic explanation. And now, like 4 years ago, this Ethereum core team showed up in Zug, and our law firm was meeting them, and they've been, they're in their 20s, and they're explaining to us the ideas about creating this new type of blockchain where you can not only transact information, you can also kind of put algorithms and software on this blockchain, and it's immutable and you cannot change it, and it's just running, and the world will change and everything is okay. And, okay, you're 20, even Vitalik was not 20 then, I think. And okay, but why are you coming to Switzerland? This is a community project. We want to change the community. We want to change how people are communicating with each other. And this decentralized Swiss political system where the people actually are still involved in decisions, in democratic processes, and you have this federalism where actually the community or the state is much more stronger than the federation. That suits very, very good to this decentralized technology, because it's the network that is deciding in a decentralized technology. And so we like kind of the mindset of Switzerland. And in addition, we've been then looking for legal structures that could be used to set up a centralized company for kind of protecting this technology, because you want to take it out of external influences. So if you have a blockchain that everyone is using, and then the company decides to sell it to Microsoft, it's quite a bad decision to the network. So you need to put it somewhere where there is no owner or shareholder that can just sell it, and it's protected, and for that, a Swiss foundation was kind of the right legal entity, because a foundation, you contribute money to the foundation, and you have to define the purpose, and you cannot just change it anymore. And there are no beneficiaries except you need to follow the purpose. And the purpose is to develop and maintain a very specific blockchain protocol, and to foster the ecosystem, etc., etc. That gave a lot of trust to the community that if they contribute something to the project, that it will be handled appropriately. No one goes on vacation to Bahamas with the money. No, it's invested in the technology, and everything is safeguarded. And if you do something wrong, you will be in jail, because you're supervised by the federal authorities and you're audited by an auditor, etc., etc. So then we had the legal structure. Then there was the question, okay, how do you now finance this project? Because, I mean, you need some money to pay developers. No one does it for free. Everyone wants to be able to feed the family. So that, okay, let's do, I mean, we want to develop something for everyone. So let's ask everyone to contribute something to the project. Let's do a crowdfunding. And crowdfunding you can do in different types. I mean, the one that everyone knows is actually you ask for contribution into the equity, you give out shares, and you will pay dividends if you're successful out of the profit. So this is an IPO you're doing. This is a crowdfunding with equity. Or you can do like a debt crowdfunding. So you're asking people to provide you with a loan, you pay interest, and you will repay the funds later on. But both spaces are quite heavily regulated. Then there are two other categories of crowdfunding. One is you say, okay, actually I just sell you a right to use a platform later on, or it's like a sales transaction. Or if you're a band and you want to crowdfund your new record production, you take the money, you produce the record, and then you give back the record to the people that have financed the project. And the fourth category is like a donation-based model. Where you say, okay, I just receive donations, and then I will use it according to the purpose, and I will provide a very new and innovative technology back to the people in the way of an open source software. And that was then the way that Ethereum took. They said, okay, we're a foundation, we're receiving donations, but we don't receive donations in normal currencies, we actually collect bitcoins. So everyone that thinks this project is great and will provide new innovation and benefits to everyone, should send us some bitcoins, and as a kind of digital receipt for your contribution, we will send you this ether that has no use at the time, but maybe later on the network it will be once used to do transactions. And that's how kind of these ecosystems evolve. So you provide technology, open source to the community, and you provide them with kind of a digital receipt, and suddenly they're doing transaction on this network without you are being involved. So the foundation is actually outside of this network, just proposing updates, proposing changes, but the network and the community is actually deciding how they want to evolve, how they want to adjust the network. So that's what happened. So they collected funds, they collected Bitcoin in the amount of around 18 million. They developed this kind of new blockchain with new functionality and launched it in 2015 and provided Ether to all the community members. And now the Ether network has a value of around 25 to 30 billion, and is still rising because it's really a great technology, and if you want to use it, you need to buy into this community. So supply is limited and there is demand, so the value of the ecosystem is rising, but it's just technology, and it's just information stored somewhere on decentralized ledger. So it's no magic, just some nerds programming algorithms, putting it out there and people using it. And so this is kind of the legal setup. Now, everyone says, okay, but how about financial regulations? Because you're doing transactions, and it sounds like a digital currency and ICO, so is crowdfunding, that's all regulated. The answer is it depends. And Switzerland has a very liberal approach to regulation, saying, okay, there are certain transactions that we need to regulate, where we need to protect the user. It's if you have an exchange, so meaning you exchange US dollar to Swiss francs, or you're exchanging Bitcoin to Swiss francs, you're a financial intermediary and you need to do KYC, so you need to identify your customer. Anti-money laundering regulations are very important, so that no black money can be exchanged through these sources. So this is part of regulation. If you are accepting deposits on behalf of clients, then you're a bank. Whether you're accepting Swiss francs or Bitcoin or any other currency, you are a bank and you need a banking license. But if you're outside of that, you're actually free to do whatever you want, because these are peer-to-peer transactions. So if I want to sell my bike to Peter for Bitcoins, why shouldn't we? I mean, no one should hinder us. If this is our free decision to do this, we are able to do this. And that's the Swiss approach. That we say, actually, the technology can be used for financial transactions, but it doesn't need to be used for financial transaction. There are so many use cases, and I think we will hear some use cases from Guy that are outside of financial transactions, that we don't need regulations for blockchain. We already have regulations for financial transactions, and that's okay. And that's enough. So we just apply these rules to that part, but everything else is outside of that. And Switzerland was very kind of fast in this conclusion. The VAT authorities accepted that Bitcoin is treated similarly to a foreign currency when doing a transaction. So, because the question was, if I sell cars for business purposes, I need to pay 8% VAT to the tax authorities as a sales tax. So the question was, if I sell Bitcoin, is this also kind of a property I'm selling that would be also subject to 8% VAT? But if I'm just transacting money, so dollar against Swiss francs, there is no VAT on such transaction. So now the question was, if I transact Swiss francs against Bitcoin, is this a currency transaction or is it a kind of a property transaction? Switzerland was very fast to say no, it's similar to a foreign currency, it's treated the same way. And others have been quite reluctant with this conclusion. That also helped to foster transactions in Switzerland. And then, there are a lot of different topics that need to be discussed if you do such a project. So you need to clarify the tax treatment, you need to clarify the legal structure, because maybe the foundation is not the right legal entity. Maybe you're doing something else, you have a commercial business purpose, so you shouldn't use that one. Because after Ethereum, then all the projects have been kind of running to Switzerland like the lemmings, and they say, I want to do the same, I want to do the same. But just be careful. Maybe it's the right way to do it, maybe totally the wrong one. And you really need to do the analysis whether Switzerland is the right location, whether the regulations, whether you are falling under regulations or not, and whether your legal structure as a foundation or as a commercial entity is the right. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Two great speakers already. So I'm going to provide a little bit of a story perspective. Hopefully, so I'm going to talk about how I got into the scene and my experience in the Bitcoin, blockchain, and the cryptocurrency space. Hopefully, as part of this as well, from the two talks we've had already, you can kind of see how my experience through this is sort of intertwined with obviously we've had to deal with the regulation side and making sure that we're always on the right side of regulation and law. But also, innovation is hard. By nature, innovation means that you're doing something that's different, it's new, and it is cutting edge. And so it's very important to have this support. I mean, it's great to see that Switzerland is putting so much energy into providing an environment that can help companies innovate and grow. And that's something that I've experienced kind of firsthand. So I'm Guy Half-Thompson, and I have a technology background. As Peter introduced, 2 years ago I founded a company called BTL. But I'm taking a little bit of a step further back from that and talk about how I first got into the industry. So 2011, I first started getting interested in Bitcoin. And I started bugging my brother about it and saying, look, this is cool new technology. No one's really heard about it, but it's really interesting. More and more people are trying to buy into this technology. At the time, I was already based in Canada. My brother was based in London, And these sites were popping up where people were able to go onto a website and buy Bitcoin. This was kind of pre-major Bitcoin exchanges. There was one at the time. It was called MTGOX. That, for some of you may have heard of it. It's a cool story to read up on. It met quite a nasty end, but was the real kind of first shake-up in the Bitcoin scene. And unless you were trading on MTGOX, you could only really buy Bitcoin in a peer-to-peer transaction. You basically had to find someone that had Bitcoin, give them money, and do an exchange. Or there was basically these websites were matching buyers and sellers. So you could go on, if you had Bitcoin, you could go on the website and say, look, I'm wanting to sell 3 Bitcoin at this price, and then you'd be matched up with someone that was looking to buy. So that's how we started. I just remember the first, the early days, like literally is how we did business. I would go and get a bunch of cash. I would go to, I think it was BMO. I would deposit the cash in a numbered bank account. This is all above board and very legitimate. This is kind of the clunky process. That would then get deposited. I would have bought Bitcoin in Canada. I was then sending those Bitcoins over to my brother. And he was then selling them in the UK for British pounds, because there was a lot more demand in the UK. We would then move that cash back over to Canada, rinse and repeat. So we did that for a few months, small amounts, obviously all kind of kept track of, and realized, we need to, there's an opportunity here, how do we turn this into a business? So we founded a company called Quick Bitcoin. When I say founded, I spent a weekend putting a website together. I have a coding background, and the Quick Bitcoin, it still operates today. We sold the business, but you can go to quickbitcoin.co.uk, and you can tell straight away that it was built in the weekend. But it is a very functional website. It's the highest ROI coding I've ever done. And so we created Quick Bitcoin, and essentially that was our own portal to sell Bitcoins. So people could come to the site, and again, at the time, I think Bitstamp had just started, but it was still very hard to buy Bitcoin. People were saying, look, I'm interested, I want to buy. Friends were coming to us saying, look, I kind of want to buy Bitcoin, but I don't know how. And we realized you literally have to sit down with someone for an hour and explain, okay, well, you have to go through all these steps. You have to set up a wallet, you have to make sure it's secure. You've got to find someone that's selling, but these are the 15,000 different ways that you could be scammed. These are the things to look out for. And it was really hard to buy Bitcoin unless you were really in the know, and knew how to kind of look after yourself, and a lot of people were getting scammed, getting their money stolen. So we set up Quick Bitcoin with the goal to guarantee people that they could have Bitcoin in their wallet in a safe way within 15 minutes. At the time, it took about 2 days to buy Bitcoin. You had to get money on an exchange. There was various kind of bank transfers, various approvals you had to go through. So from the moment you said, I want to buy Bitcoin, 2 days later was when you would actually have that Bitcoin. And at the time, the price was moving pretty fast. We were seeing Bitcoin going up and down, generally up 20-30% a day. So we set up this website. People would come to us. We were the first company to have our kind of public profiles on the website. We had a phone number. We had an email address. We had live chat support. It's all just 2 of us on this website. People would come and buy. They would send us some money, and we used the UK's faster payment systems. And within 15 minutes, they'd have Bitcoin in their wallet. And that it's now easier to get money on the exchange. It's easier to buy Bitcoin, but that is still one of the easiest ways to get hold of Bitcoin. Is to go to, especially in the UK, and there's a number of sites that have kind of copied this model, and it allows very fast access to actually get hold of Bitcoin. And so this is now kind of 2012. It's right when Ethereum was starting to come together as an idea as well. And the company started growing. So we were running this out of London. At the time, some of you in this room are probably aware, so Vancouver has some claim to fame to Bitcoin. The world's first Bitcoin ATM was put in Vancouver, just up the street here. It's still there. It's in the Waves coffee shop on, I think it's Robson. That's the world's first Bitcoin ATM. A company called Bitcoiniacs put that there. We then working with Bitcoiniacs, put the first ATM into London. And so for a couple of years, we operated Bitcoin ATM in Shoreditch in London. And the Bitcoin ATM, for those that don't know, is literally, it's just a machine that you can buy or sell Bitcoin to. So it's the best ATM in the world. So if you give it Bitcoin, it will give you money. you can actually go in and come out more money than you started with. But as we started building this business, this is kind of relating to BTL a little bit more. We started seeing some of the frictions. One of the big challenges we had, and tying into the regulation side, none of the banks wanted to deal with us. So we were starting to find that we were operating a business above board. We were keeping track of our accounts. We were going above and beyond. My experience in environments that are innovative and not yet fully regulated is to assume the worst regulation possible and try and abide by that. So you know that when the rules do get adjusted, that you're on the right side of it. But none of the banks wanted to deal with this, and so we were finding it very hard to keep bank accounts open to be able to transact. And so we started looking outside the UK for banks, and we ended up finding a bank in Hong Kong that was very open to dealing with us. But then we had a problem, which was, well, how do we get our money from the UK to Hong Kong? Well, we live in a modern world, and the banks are supposed to be innovative and technologically advanced. So we looked at how we get money from UK to Hong Kong. Obviously, it needed to be fast. A big issue when you're building a startup, as I'm sure those in the industry know, is you need cash flow. You can't have money tied up and sitting around for a long time. So we needed a way to get money from the UK to Hong Kong. Does anyone know what the fastest way to send money from the UK to Hong Kong is?
Briefcase.
The answer is an aeroplane. The fastest way to send money internationally is on an aeroplane. So we never actually did this because there was various complications, but we looked at how do we get into this. This bank that wants to deal with this. A wire transfer was going to take 3 days. It was going to cost quite a bit of money as well. We actually engaged DHL and a company called 3DS. They would come pick up the cash, put it in boxes, secure it, put it on a pallet, put it on an airplane, fly to Hong Kong, unpack it, put it on pallets, deliver it to the bank and cash it faster and cheaper than an international wire transfer. And that kind of gives you an idea of, it's good that there's some applause, but we should not be applauding that. It should be shocked. Yeah. And that made us think, like, what is wrong with the world today that why is it that the fastest way to send money is on an airplane? It doesn't make sense. So this is kind of taking us into late 2012, 2013, 2014. At the time as well, so one of the things we benefited a lot from our blend is actually Ethereum was actually one of our clients. So they raised a lot of money through their Bitcoin crowd sale. Occasionally they actually had to pay real bills, so they needed money. So a lot of the Ethereum developers were actually using us to access sell their Bitcoin for cash. And that was at a time where we saw the first major kind of Bitcoin spike as well that most people are aware of. We saw Bitcoin go in a matter of days from $50 to $1,000 and then kind of crash back down quite quickly. That kind of seems small now, seeing the price today. But this was right when people started gaining exposure and the people on the street started understanding a little bit about Bitcoin. And what I sort of see is the advent of blockchain in the sense that Bitcoin was always built on the blockchain, but the advent of blockchain technology companies. And for us, it was all about, we've seen so many frustrations. A lot of people that were using Quick Bitcoin were looking to send money abroad, whether it was remittances to the Philippines, to India, business transfers. We have businesses calling us up saying, look, we need to get money here quickly. Can we do it through Bitcoin? And we started thinking, well, hang on a sec, can we not use this technology to solve the traditional problems that we have? Why can't we apply this technology into banking, into actually making these transactions faster? Because ultimately, in my view, still today, is that we use Bitcoin as a bit of a kind of inconvenient convenience. I'm not, why do I use Bitcoin? It's not that I want to go and buy my Starbucks coffee with Bitcoin. It's that I want a more efficient Canadian dollar. It's not that I want to use Bitcoin to send money abroad. It's that I want to go to my bank and say I want to send $1,000 to the UK and I want it to be there in 5 seconds. Like, that shouldn't be a big problem. So at that point, we ended up, so Hugh and I sold Quick Bitcoin in summer of 2015 and at the same time founded BTL. And we founded BTL with a goal to take the learnings that we had from Quick Bitcoin, take the technology behind Bitcoin, and look at how we could apply that to traditional infrastructure and traditional industries. So how could we take that technology and work with the banks to help improve their system, help improve their technology, and as we'll kind of talk about as well, that's now expanded well beyond the finance sector. So 2015, founded the company. November 2015, we took the company public on the Toronto Stock Exchange. We're the world's first listed blockchain company. And that was a kind of another advent of innovation. You know, I remember the first time I went to Toronto to raise money in the public markets for a blockchain company when no one even heard the word blockchain before. You know, it's quite a challenge. You know, and this was only 2015, less than 2 years ago. People just had not heard of this industry. People weren't investing in it. You know, most people by then have kind of heard of Bitcoin, but there was a huge education curve. If you go to Toronto now and you mention blockchain, people are literally throwing money at you. You know, 2 years ago, they didn't want to give you the time of day. At the same time, and this was our kind of first advent into Switzerland, so I did. We went and raised money both in Zurich and Geneva. Had a really good experience there. You know, one of the big differences I've seen between Canada and Switzerland, and I think it's true in the UK as well, is Swiss investors are a lot more open to, we know we don't understand the technology, but show us what it can do and we'll support it. My experience with Canadian investors is that typically they feel if it doesn't fit the formula, it's a little bit too far outside the box. We really needed people that wanted to support innovation and have some faith in us and say, okay, well, look, we don't understand all the details, but we want to follow the story and continue it. So I've done 2 roadshows in Switzerland. I did one when we first listed the company, and we did a roadshow both in Geneva and Zurich, and then 2 years later, and that was we raised money at 15 cents. And then 2 years later, we did a very similar roadshow in Zurich and Geneva, and actually the vast majority of people that showed up were the same investors that I met 2 years previously. And at that point, the stock was at $5, so it's nice to be speaking to happy investors, and a lot of people were still investing at that point. So we founded BTL, listed it, and then the last 2 years, we've been really, and there's a number of really great companies in this space. So we're certainly not the only one, and it's amazing to see just the change that Ethereum's had on the world. Some other companies as well. But from our side, BTL, we've really been driving a change of how do we get blockchain into big companies. Our first big success was running an interbank settlement pilot with Visa, which we did last year. So that was looking at how do we apply our technology to payments between banks. It's funny, it's not only consumers that want to see faster payments, apparently banks want to be able to send money faster as well. The question always comes up, and what I think is so important is, well, what is it about blockchain that means that a bank can send money faster? What is it about it that means it can apply in this space? And a lot of it is just by creating automation and by reducing the complexity of the infrastructure. Systems today are very, very complicated, are very convoluted, are very expensive to build and maintain and run. And the internet was built for communication. The whole point of a website is to provide the same information to everyone. And then we build these systems on top to try and limit who can see what and how they can see it. And when you look at how we use the internet today, most of that is trying to connect, for example, in a banking environment, trying to connect different networks in a way that we can send very specific information to very specific people, and no one else can see that information. It's not what the internet was designed for. It's exactly what blockchain is designed for. Blockchain is designed to be a distributed system where, when you set it up correctly, specific people can see specific information. The whole system works. So when you're building on a blockchain platform, or we've developed a platform called Intuit, which is very much focused towards this. When you're building on a private blockchain platform, a lot of the base infrastructure that you would normally build, you normally invest billions of dollars in for traditional IT, is no longer required. It's already there at the base platform layer. I mean, I could talk a long time on the kind of technicalities of it, but to give you an example, we did a project after Visa. We started looking at oil and gas trading. We did a project in December of last year where we worked with a major oil and gas company and looked at an internal process they had which kept track of liquid natural gas. So from the moment it came out of the ground to the moment it was sold, and they had to keep track of it through the various transport, the various storage, various shipping processes. And we did a 10-week project building on a blockchain platform. And it was a bit of an embarrassment because I remember very distinctly this, so a big project, a big deal for us. And we're 9 weeks into the 10-week project, and my CTO comes into my offices a little bit sheepishly and said, "We've got a little bit of a problem." I said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "Well, we've only got 56 lines of code." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, that's all we need is 56 lines of code." And he was very concerned. He said, "How can we go to a client after 10 weeks and say, here's a piece of paper with all the code on it, and that's what you've invested your money in." And it was true. We reduced a system that was around about 22,000 lines of code into 52 lines of code on a blockchain. And the reason is because all of the, all they were trying to do was keep track of an asset essentially as it moves through various systems. That's not very hard to do. It's 52 lines of code. The other 21,000 lines of code were all about, well, how do we control access to it? How do we audit it? How do we make sure it's backed up? How do we build?
Oh, so good.
Okay. And that's really what blockchain offers, is a huge reduction in the cost and effort to build IT, to build infrastructure, and then to maintain it. And so that's what we're doing at BTL. And just the final point on that, I think it's so important. I think it really embodies, it's a fantastic group here today. In order to succeed in innovation, you need those ecosystems, you need those supports. By definition, innovation is pushing the boundaries, is pushing outside the box. And as much as people want change, they're naturally resistant to change. And the environment that we build business in, that environment is created for the business today, not the business of tomorrow. And so it is so important, and obviously we're seeing this with the Swiss Chamber of Commerce today, but in your respective businesses as well, you need to be able to create environments that support innovation, that support change, and don't see changes as something negative. Not all change is good, but if you want to be able to embrace blockchain, you need to be open to new ideas and new discussions. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your talk. I know very little about blockchain, so I don't know how good my question is, but I'm curious about, it sounds very exciting, the whole blockchain technology. I'm curious about the security aspects of it, in terms of, I could imagine voting happening on a blockchain. I'm also sort of considering transactions be as expensive and as time-consuming they are because of all the security aspects of it. And so once that is all out in the open, so to speak, can you still, how secure is it, or can you make it secure? Is it secure by nature?
Under. Yeah.
I'm on the microphone. Yeah, the security question, a very good question. So two things I want to just very briefly touch on now. One is, you can build the best safe in the world, but if you leave the door open, someone's going to break in and steal it. So really, it's blockchain doesn't introduce anything new into cryptography-wise. Ethereum, Bitcoin, these are all built on cryptography that's been around, that's been proven for a number of years, but is applying it in a different way. And generally, when you look at most of the security issues that we see in transactions that we see in day-to-day are down to human error. And human error is more prevalent when you have systems that are more complex. And so my view is that the majority of the additional security that we get from implementing blockchain technology is because the systems themselves are drastically less complex. And when you have something that's less complex, it's easier to see all of the components of that system that you can monitor, you can audit, you can make sure are secure. And so it's not going to eliminate fraud, it's not going to eliminate hacking or it's not a sort of silver bullet when it comes to security, but it's built with security in mind from the foundation. It's built on cryptography, and by being a much simpler system, it's easier to see if there's any holes to keep track of what's going on.
Any other questions?
I guess my question, I don't know who to address this to, but is there an API? What organization, if there is, what organization maintains it? And how is it regulated as an API?
So I'll tell them. So there's no API for blockchain. There's various standards organizations that are being developed. Any technology that are being developed, there's standards that are being developed around how blockchains can intercommunicate. But it's still very, very early in this industry. We're really just scratching the surface. And one of the dangers of building standards too early, in my opinion, is that you're trying to carve things in stone before you've really discovered their full potential. And so with modern technology is built to communicate. No one's building a blockchain-based system without the idea of it communicating in mind. So everyone will build APIs into their systems. They're trying to make them as compatible both with traditional technology, traditional systems, as well as other blockchain platforms as much as they can. That's the way the technology gets adopted. But as of yet, we're not seeing the standards solidify, and my view is I don't think we will see that for quite a long time. I don't think we need it at the moment. I think that we can go quite a long way without actually having standards in place.
So blockchain has a lot of uses, and one of them is real estate. Has any real estate blockchain companies or startups had an impact in Switzerland?
To my knowledge, no. Not yet. But we are seeing cases emerging while we see protocols being fully developed. Most of the applications are in its childhood. And I think within the next 5 years we might see applications including real estate which are fully developed and actually adding value to the current system. Most of the applications which are currently developed and deployed, which are fully functioning, are financial applications. We also have a couple of life science projects dealing with healthcare data, real estate, upcoming.
Thank you for that.
Yes, so there's certainly a lot of traditional businesses like insurance companies, etc. They're owning a lot of real estate. So they're thinking about how can we, making real estate transferable, because it's an immovable property. You usually have public register, etc. But they try to find a way that at least they can make the income from real estate transferable, so that you would tokenize kind of the income that you can easily transfer at least that layer. And on the other hand, certainly public register, etc. That's a lot of topic that this would be the build on blockchain as well in the future.
Right? No, I don't want to force it. regarding the Canadian regulatory concerns, talked to a consortium of ATM and exchanges that are now transacting their fiat currency outside of Canadian financial institutions. RBC being one of them, under one of my businesses now. It's so difficult to conduct business in Canada in the Bitcoin space, going back to the earlier Bitcoin space. How did you guys manage to conduct your fiat cash transaction in Canada so long ago, 4 or 5 years ago?
So we only did it in Canada for quite a short space of time, and the amounts were relatively small. One of the reasons that we moved it all to the UK so quickly, and at the time we were still operating businesses in the UK, was because of the regulatory environment. We had similar challenges in the UK that at the time it was still unclear if they were going to charge VAT on Bitcoin, so a lot of companies were quite concerned about that. That was a big concern, it was a big unknown, and a lot of companies were limiting. We could have done a lot more business. There's other companies, similar to ours, that could have done a lot more business, but people were holding back because they were we were engaging with the regulators, but the regulators are quite there. It's nice that we can engage with regulators, but often their response is we're going to decide later. So we just have to be careful.
Okay, we have one more question, and then we actually have to. Okay, the gentleman here who actually tried. Yes, please go ahead and address one of the speakers if possible.
Thank you very much for the anecdote of the LNG application. And I think it's a great example of how applications can grow overly complex and be disrupted by protocols. So what other areas do you think are ripe for disruption by protocols, or what other areas are not suited to novel protocols?
That's a tough one. So I'll keep it brief, but I think my view is anytime where you have companies or systems that are looking to selectively share data. So anytime you have a supply chain, anytime you have financial transactions, anytime you have systems where two parties don't fully trust each other but they need to transact information, you can, to use a sort of same technical term, you can build a better protocol or get rid of your protocol by using a blockchain-based, foundational base. Outside of that, blockchain is being used and different blockchain platforms have many different applications. But I think unless you're transacting data and information, that's really the limitation of where blockchain adds value.
Okay, thank you. And one last question.
Thanks so much. This is a question for Thomas. You mentioned Swiss foundations. I'm kind of personally obsessed with Swiss foundations because they seem like the meat space equivalent of smart contracts. You set up all the rules, you set them up, and then you can't change anything, and you're kind of stuck with what you decided to do ahead of time. But that, of course, gives all sorts of assurances to the people that are doing business with you. What roughly would be the sort of added cost of doing a Swiss foundation versus a company in terms of maybe the initial setup fees or the auditing and whatnot that you'd have to do over year? So if you were just doing rough napkin sketch financials, what kind of numbers would you put in there?
There is not a big difference from cost quantity whether you set up a company or a foundation. It's a little bit a different process. The company, you have maybe a higher additional capital that you need to contribute. You need a bank account for the blocked account. And later on, then you can incorporate the foundation. It's a little bit different process, but the costs are similar. So I mean, the mere setup from a legal point of view is like $5,000 to $10,000. But certainly, if you want to do a whole blockchain project with it, with analysis from a regulatory point of view, discussion with the tax authorities, drafting terms for the fundraiser, and then doing the fundraiser, etc. So for a whole project, maybe you need 50 to 100K to run such a company.
Sure,
Thank
we
you
talked
very
about
much.
audits. Is there an added overhead of the auditory compliance for foundations?
There you're just required to have an auditor. So, but he's auditing the books. You're under supervision of the Federal Supervisory Authority for Foundations. Adds a little bit of administration overhead because you need to send them your P&L and your financial statements, etc. But at the end, it's not different to a company if there is some transactions going on and business activity.
Yeah, if you have more specific questions, all the speakers are going to hear for another 15 to 20 minutes. And I now would like to ask my fellow director, Michael Dewing, to have some final.
Thank you, Peter. On behalf of Swiss Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Consul General of Switzerland, and RBC, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the speakers for coming all this way. Hope all our guests had a wonderful time as well. I certainly learned a lot. Somebody said I also wanted to say just on changes here. I can tell you today, Royal Bank just invested in a blockchain sort of proprietary thing with a few other banks, so it's all very, very exciting stuff. Yeah! On behalf of the sponsors, I'd like to give a little farewell gift. Thomas, you're over here. We're giving the Swiss chocolate, that's a great idea. Lucas. Guy. Really appreciate it. The speakers will be around for a few more minutes. Take the time to talk to them and have a great and safe evening.